Okay, guys. So we really need to close this session in next 2 to 3 days. Okay. So we have seen how to design a web-based application using MVC architecture. Okay. And we have seen how to design a distributed application. So why do you need a distributed application? So whenever you need to expose your services to third party, when some data has to be exchanged between different systems located in different locations across the network. So then we require a distributed application. Now all your applications like Facebook, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. So these applications are working based on only distributed application. Because of this, you're able to communicate with your friends through WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, and other applications, right? So this can be implemented in 3 different ways. Those are going to be remoting, web service, and web API. We have already seen how to design a distributed application using remoting and how to design a distributed application using web service. What is the difference between these two? So when it comes to remoting is a platform dependent technology. It provides communication between same platforms and it will make use of TCP protocol, transmission control protocol. As I said, whenever you want to send something, from one location to another location, so that something has to be arranged properly, right? That something has to be arranged properly. So when it comes to distributed application development, here you'll have to make use of two protocols. One is formatting protocol and another one is transmission protocol. Okay, so you should remember these things: formatting protocol and transmission protocol. Transmission protocol, right? So when you want to send something, let's say if you want to send some gift to your friend who is in different location, so what has to be done? First, your gift has to be arranged to protect your gift from thieves or from some damages. Your gift has to be arranged properly. Then who is going to carry your gift? Who is going to send your gift? You have to choose a courier, right? So arrangement of your gift, arrangement of your data will be done through formatting protocol. Here also same thing. From your WhatsApp, when you say hi, your hi has to be delivered to other end, your friend WhatsApp. When you say how are you, your hour has to be delivered from your friend device to your device, right? Here, when data has to be transferred from one system to another system, what has to be done? First, your data has to be arranged in a particular format. Then who will carry your information from one end to another end? That is going to be a transmission protocol. So whenever you need to exchange data between two different systems, you need to make use of two protocols. One is formatting protocol, another one is transmission protocol. Formatting protocol will take care of arranging your request and response in a specific format. And transmission protocol will take care of transferring your data from one system to another system. And example for your formatting protocols like binary formatter, SOAP formatter, and JSON formatter. And transmission protocols, whenever you type some web address in your browser, we use protocols like TCP, HTTP, HTTPS, right? These are the protocols which will take care of transmitting your data. Transmission control protocol, hypertext transmission protocol, hypertext transmission protocol. S means more secure. HTTPS is more secure compared to HTTP. See, based on your requirement and based on the type of technology that you're using to implement your distributed application, you have to decide which formatting protocol has to be used to arrange your request and response and which transmission protocol has to be used to arrange your request and response. For example, if you take remoting is a platform dependent technology which provides communication between only homogeneous systems, same systems. And in case of remoting, everything has to be arranged in a binary format. That's why it is a platform dependent. Because so binary is a kind of platform specific language. Platform specific language. For example, if it is a Microsoft system, it will generate only Microsoft understandable code. When it comes to Unix and Linux, other system cannot understand binary format. So that's why if you develop your distributed application using remoting, it is going to be platform dependent one because the communication will be exchanged in binary format. Okay. And here to transfer your data. So once here, your data has to be arranged in binary format. So we make use of binary formatter protocol to arrange your request and response. And to transfer your request and response, we make use of TCP protocol, right? For arrangement, you have to use formatting protocol, that is binary formatter. And to transfer your data, so once your data is ready, once your data is arranged, it has to be transferred from one end to another end. So here we need a transmission protocol. Okay, so we make use of TCP. Next, to overcome the drawbacks of remoting, to make it platform independent, immediately Microsoft has introduced another concept called web services. Web services. It is a platform independent technology. Once you develop anything using web services, it can be exchanged, it can be transferred between different systems. Because, see, whether it is a remoting web service or web API, in all the cases, you have to make use of two things, two protocols, binary, like formatting and transmission, right? Here also same thing. What web service will do, whatever remoting is doing, web service will also do the same thing. But the difference is, the remoting is a platform dependent technology. It provides communication between only homogeneous platforms. Web service is a platform independent technology. So why it is platform independent? Because here we make use of SOAP protocol to arrange your request and response. SOAP means simple object access protocol. So what SOAP will do? SOAP will arrange your data in XML format. SOAP will arrange your data in XML format. When it comes to XML format, XML is a open industry standard. Java knows XML, .NET knows XML, C knows XML, C++. Every platform knows XML. But all platforms doesn't know binary formatting. That's why if I arrange something in binary format, other platforms cannot understand. But if I send something in XML format, other platforms can easily understand, can easily consume your data. So that's why web service has become platform independent, because it will arrange your data in XML format. So data is going to be transferred in XML format. So when it comes to consumer, yes, you can easily understand XML. Any system can understand XML. That's why web service has become platform independent. And here we make use of HTTP or HTTPS to transfer data. To arrange your data, we make use of SOAP. What SOAP will do? SOAP will arrange your data in XML format. And who will transfer? So we need someone to carry this information from one end to another end. And who is that? It is going to be HTTP or HTTPS, right? If you need to transfer your data more securely, then use HTTPS. If you do not require that much security, you can manage it with HTTP. Okay, so this is something about binary formatter and so like formatting protocol and transmission protocol. So in any distributed application, irrespective of the technology, whether it is .NET or Java, if you want to send something from one end to another end, what has to be done? First, that something has to be arranged in a specific format. Then we need someone to carry that from one end to another end, right? So to arrange your data, to arrange your request and response, we make use of formatting protocol. Those are going to be binary format of SOAP and JSON. And to transfer your data, who will carry that information? Your transmission protocol. There is going to be TCP, HTTP, and HTTPS. So in case of web service, what happens? Yes, it is a platform independent technology, but here also you need to follow few standards to arrange your data in XML format. XML will be accepted by everyone, every platform, every technology. But XML itself contains some standards. You cannot arrange data as you like. In order to arrange data in XML also, you need to follow some standards. Are you with me? So that's why here also you need to follow some standards to arrange your request and response. And if someone wants to consume your data, so whatever the standards that are used to arrange your request or response, if they want to consume it, they should also follow similar standards. They need to know the standards used behind arrangement of your data, arrangement or request and response. And they need, in order to consume this, they should also follow the similar standards. All right, but sometimes this also leads to a problem. Can't we send anything without any standards? Like, I want something to be consumed without any standards. I want something to be called directly wherever I need it. That cannot be possible to web services. To make it possible, we have a powerful technology introduced, that is web API. Web API. Web API is also called as RESTful service. RESTful service. No need to follow any specific standard to arrange your request and response. Everything can be sent in the form of a string. Everything can be sent in the form of a string. When it comes to string, a string can be directly called from anywhere. It is a string. It can be directly called from your web page. It can be called from anywhere without any standards. If you want to consume a string, you can consume it directly. No need to decode it. No serialization and deserialization is required. Already, a string can be called directly from anywhere. So this is going to be your JSON string. In case of Web API, the communication will be exchanged in the form of JSON string. When it comes to JSON string is a string. Your millions of records can be sent as a string. Your millions of records can be sent as a single string. And when it comes to string, no need to follow any standards. It can be consumed directly from anywhere. Okay, so we have seen how to implement your distributed application using remoting. We also have seen how to implement your distributed application using web service. Now we will see how to implement your distributed application using a RESTful service called Web API. Any questions, guys, so far?
No, sir.
So nowadays, irrespective of the technology, whether Java or .NET, every new application is using Web API. But still, 80% of the application exists in web services. Still, they are using web services, but slowly they are also migrating web services into Web API. Okay, and compared to performance also, Web API is very faster compared to web service. Okay, guys, now let's see how to implement your Web API using MVC, .NET MVC. Okay, so this is our database. So let's create a Web API which will consume, which will interact with a database called server called LP001287. In that server, we are going to interact with a database called employee DB, which has set of employee tables. Okay, so let's interact with this table. Okay, so it has 5 records and it has 4 fields: employee ID, employee name, salary, and address. Okay, so let's see how to interact with your database. So we already have seen like how to interact with your database using EDO.NET. Here we will see, here we have entity framework support provided. You don't need to write any command manually. Rather, you can replicate your database within your in memory, like within your main memory. Okay, so let's see that. So open your Visual Studio, go to new project. And guys, please make sure that you have, if you are going to develop Web API, because here now we have classic .NET framework as well as .NET Core. So the process is same, but ensure that you are installing, the supported versions of your entity framework. Okay. Especially if you are going to choose .NET framework, okay, select ASP.NET framework and make sure you have installed latest version of entity framework. Let's say employee API. Okay, it targets multiple frameworks. Okay, if you are going to work with 4 or 4.5, so you can use entity framework 5. But if you are going to work with the latest version of this, so make sure that you have installed latest version of entity framework. Otherwise, there will be no sync between your .NET and entity framework. Okay, you end up with like a lot of issues. My employee API. Okay, so as I said, ASP.NET, the single template targets now, like multiple application types. Like you can choose empty, and later you can add any one of these 4. If web form is a classic ASP.NET, which comes with .aspx and .aspx page, and MVC, we have already seen this. We implemented ASP.NET web page like .aspx, .aspx. We also have implemented MVC. Now let's see Web API. So while like developing this, during your development, no need to configure HTTPS. Okay, you can go with HTTP. Create. Now, this is my database. Okay, here it has set of tables. There are some third-party teams. They are also working for my organization, but I cannot grant them direct access to my database, because if the access is granted to my database, they can do whatever they want to, right? There will be no security. That's why I don't want them to interact directly with my database. Rather, I'd like to expose these operations through my service. If they wanted to get something from my database, if they wanted to save something into my database, they should do it through some medium that is going to be your service. It can be remoting, it can be a web service, it can be a web API. Now, I would like to let them interact with my database through only service. It means I'd like to expose these operations through a service called web API. They can do anything, but they should be allowed to do this through service. They should not be allowed directly to interact with my database. That way, I'll be able to protect my database. I'll be able to provide more security to my database, right? So if they want to access something, they have to call that service, not call a web API. Are you to me? So through that, they'll be able to interact with my database, but they don't know like where is my database server and what is the credential information. Okay, so it's very difficult to know that information. Okay, that way I'll be able to provide more security to my database server. Okay, so that's why I'd like to expose all operations of employee through surveys, like get employee details, save employee details, update employee, delete employee. Okay, now I'm going to create a service called web API. Okay, now this web API is going to interact with my database because this is hosted in my premises. It is owned by me. I can trust this service. Nobody can hit it. That's why I can disclose that information within my web API, like my database information. But if someone wants to interact with my server, they should call my API. Are you with me? So they don't know like which server it is interacting with, like what is the credential information that is being used to interact with your database. So they don't know anything about it. They'll be able to see only your operation names, but they can't see what is happening, like in the background of those operations. Okay. So let's see. So first, if you want your service has to interact with your database, see, this is the structure of your MVC. As I said, your ASP.NET MVC web application comes with MVC means model view controller, right? So model will hold data, controller will operate your models and views, controller will be controlling your views and models, right? But when it comes, this is web API. Actually, views are not required. If it is a web-based application, if it is a website, view is required, right? We are just going to expose our services, but we are not going to send the UI details to any UI to end user. Okay, so that's why this views part is not required. If it is MVC, the view part is not required. Okay, just get them deleted from here. I just deleted it. And controller by default, as I said, it follows MVC structure, but view won't be there. Okay. Next, controller. When it comes to controller, so by default, it has been provided two controllers. You can get them deleted from here. These are also not required. Okay. Right. And next, when it comes to abstract, so we know that bundle.config, filter.config. So bundle.config contains information about your bundles, jQuery, and these are required for UI, right? If you're using views, it is required. Otherwise, you can also get it deleted. Okay, and filter.config. Okay, it will filter. So if you want to add any filters to filter the request, you can make use of it. And next one is root.config. Root.config and webapi.config. So this root is related to your views. If you are using views, are you getting me? Then here we have to configure that. We have already seen this in our MVC. Like you have to configure some default things. Like whenever you start your application, if someone send request to your application, which controller has to be presented first, which view has to be presented first. Okay, so that has to be configured here. This is kind of default configuration. For example, here if you can see home and index, right? So whenever like you try to access this service by default, like if it is having home controller and view index view, by default these will be presented, but we are not going to use this anymore. Okay, because we have deleted the views. And the most and important part is your API. This is API, right? VB config.cs. Okay. Here also, this is optional. If you want, you can configure a default route. Like whenever someone sends a request to your API, which controller by default, which controller has to be accessible to the end user. And you should also define the structure of the URL, the structure of the URL. For example, here I can give it as API, or I can give my organization name, something like Oxford, or me. So how do you want to call your service? So ideally, we use API/controller. Okay. So if you want to call this API, okay, first you have to enter the address, something like HTTPS and server name. Then it should be something like /API/controller. If you're going to call employee controller, it should be something employee. And if you want to pass any parameters, you can add it. Otherwise, this is going to be optional. And you can also comment out this default parameters. This is the default configuration, but this can be overridden. This can be overridden. This route could also be added on top of your action method. Okay, this is the default configuration, right? If the action method is not mapped to any specific route, by default, you have to use this format. Any questions, guys, so far?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, right. Let's add our controller. But before adding our controller, first we need to create our database context. Right. As I said, your API is going to interact with your database. Here you can write ADO.NET. But if you use ADO.NET, again, you would write everything manual, like you would write SQL commands, SQL connection, everything. Okay. But that burden is not required here. Here we have entity framework support is provided here. What entity framework will do? It will extract, it will create a DB context, like the way how you're interacting with your database. Whatever you're doing here in the database, the same thing will be replicated in your memory. It's a kind of, it will create kind of inline memory. It will create kind of inline memory database. Okay, so that context will be used to interact with your database. Like it will simulate the things, like it will replicate your database within your memory, within your application memory. The way how you are writing your queries here, the way how you are interacting, the same thing will be replicated here. Here also you can write your link queries to interact your database. It would create, it would extract everything from a database, it will establish the connection, and it reads everything about the database and creates a context for you where you can directly interact with your context, and that context would update the information to your actual database. Okay. So to do this, first, what should I do? I need to install entity framework. And here we have NuGet package support provided. Go to NuGet packages, browse, search for entity framework. And make sure this is pointed to NuGet. Okay. Here we have entity framework core and entity framework. This is related to .NET Core. Okay. We'll see this when we implement same API using .NET Core. For now, we have to use entity framework and make sure you're installing the latest version. Okay. Done. We have installed entity framework core. Now what you have to do? You have to create a DB context and you have to create a model to hold your employee data, right? You should replicate your table in the form of a model. How do I replicate my table in the C#.NET? So we need to create a model to replicate your table. It means create a class. Model in the sense create a class. And each field has to be represented using a property. So create a class with 4 property. Each property is going to represent one different column. Okay, that is your model. So whenever is data extracted from your database to your context, you need to hold it. To hold it, you should have similar kind of structure. How do you create that similar kind of structure? Using a model. So let's create a model. Here you will have models. Right click on this, create a class, and give as employee right? This is my employee model. And how do I replicate my properties like my column names? Each column should be taken as a property, employee, employee name, salary, and address. So create some public properties. It is EMP ID. Next, string EMP name. Next, string address. Next, salary, decimal salary, right? So this is my model. So whenever data is extracted, whenever the employee data is extracted, if you want to hold it, you'd be needing a variable. What should be the type of that variable? It should have similar structure. That is going to be a class. So what is int? Int 16. What is string? All data types are classes only. Int is nothing but int 16, which comes with system dot data. System system namespace will comes with set of classes, and this is one of those your system namespace comes with. So how do you access system dot int 16, system dot int 32? So int is also a class. Each data type in C# is considered as a class, right? Now, in order to hold employee data, I created my own class. So like int, employee is also one of the data type. Ready me? Like int, this is system data type, and this is your own data type. We call it as custom data type. Now you can call employee as also one of the data type. Ready me? These data types were implemented by the system. We call them as system data type. String is a class. Int is a class. Comes with system namespace. What is the full reference of int? We refer it something like system dot int 16, system dot string, system dot decimal, system dot float, system dot boolean. Read me. So boolean is a class, comes with system namespace. Same thing. Employee is a class, comes with this namespace. So like your int string, boolean, employee is also one of the data type, right? So we are creating our own data type to hold employee information. So we call it as custom data type. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. So now let's give a table name. Sometimes, if the class name to be different from your table name. So here you can also give a property called table of employee. For example, there your table name is EMP, but you wanted to give your data type as employee, some meaningful name. In this case, you need this property. Just map it. If I give EMP employee, what happens? So it says that like, the backend table name is employee, but like here we are representing it as employee. So what happens internally, the mapping will be done between EMP and employee. All EMP fields will be mapped to corresponding employee. Okay, if it is different and it is highlighted red color, so you need to import that respective namespace. So this property comes with system.componentModel.data annotations. And you could also tell the system about your key. So in our table, this is a key. So I would like to represent the replicate the similar structure. I want to tell the system, hey, this is my key. Yes, you can do that. Key. And for these, you need to import data annotations. Okay, data annotations comes with a property called key. Now we have replicated the exactly same structure, right? Here it is a key, employed is a key. Yes, we provide that as a key, employed is a key, and these are non-keys. Okay, so our model is ready. Now, if the data is extracted, we can hold it using this data type called employee, right? So next, what should I do? Now, I should establish connection to this database. I should establish this connection to this database. I mean, I should create a DB context using entity framework. Once that context is created, once everything is replicated about my database, then I can start performing different operations with my database. So how do I create a DB context? So before that, go to your configuration file and add your connection string. Okay. Or first you can also write your context. Go to models, add one more class. Now let's create DB context. Okay. So this can be directly created through your wizard. For example, you right click here. Here I can add edu.at entity model. This is a wizard. It will ask you to enter your model, or it will take you through some process. Like it will ask you to enter your database details on the state. Okay. So, but as a developer, you should not, like prefer these kind of wizard based modes, right? You should know like how to create it manually. Okay. So better, like start avoiding using wizards and start creating everything on your own. If you create anything on your own, you'll get a chance to optimize the things, right? So I will show you, if I create it through wizard, a lot of unnecessary stuff will be created. Again, you always end up, like cleaning that unnecessary stuff. Okay. So I do not recommend those things. Okay. Because you need to know everything from the scratch. You need to know how to build it manually. Okay. Stop using the wizards and start creating everything on your own. Okay. Now we will see. So whatever your wizard will do, we will do the same thing manually. Okay. Let's create our own context. Go to models, add a class. It is going to be employee DB context. Right? Now, in order to create the DB context of your entity framework, so it should inherit the base class of your entity framework called DB context class. Your entity framework comes with a DB context class. This will take care of replicating your database server and establishing the context. So that's why if you are going to create your own DB context, it should inherit a base class called DB context. See, now the corresponding namespace has to be imported. System.data.entity. It is imported. It should inherit a base class called DB context. It comes with your entity framework. What is my entity framework? This DLL is called my entity framework. Whenever I install entity framework, what will be installed? So this DLL will be installed, system.data.entity. So this is called your entity framework. It comes with all functionalities related to your entity frameworks. So it will let you interact with your database directly. It will replicate your database. It creates some context for you within your application memory. That context will let you interact with your database, will let you perform different database operations. Okay. How do I access my employee table? Okay. So like your data set, here we have DB set. So create a property. Create a property. Okay. And here it is going to be DB set. A return type is going to be DB set. What it is going to return? It is going to return the employee. Right? A data set of employee, like collection records of employee. That's why we give it as a DB set of the type of your table. What is the model? Here we have replicated your employee table using this model. That's why this should be taken as a type. And here you can give any name like employees. So this property is going to give me the employee table. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, right. So my context is ready. Now what should I do? This will take care of establishing a connection. But now I need to provide like, to which database server it should connect to. Okay, I should provide the connection details and go to your app.config. Here, add those connection strings. Connection strings. Here, add. Okay, name is equal to, this name is nothing but your connection string name should be same as your employee DB context. Next, connection string. Provide here your server details. What is the server name? And what is the database name? And what is the authentication to be used? I want to make use of Windows authentication. Then it should be trust_connection or integrated security is equal to true. Or if you want to make use of SQL account, In place of trust underscore connection is equal to true. Please provide user ID and password. And what is the server name? Let's take it from here. So this is my server name, LP001287. And what is the database name? My database name is employee DB. Right? Now what it will do, your DB context will make use of this connection string to interact with your actual database. So it will connect to your database by using this connection string details and replicate everything within your application memory. And this context will let you interact with your database and will let you perform different DB operations. Okay, so our context is ready. Now we can start interacting with your database. Any questions, guys?
No.
No, sir.
Okay, now let's create. So our context is ready. Now you have to create your controller. Add controller. Here we have different categories, right? Under this MVC, this is not MVC. We are going to create web API. Okay, so your web API controller with actions using entity framework. If I select this, it will generate everything for you, all CRUD operations, like the way we did in MVC application, right? When we selected actions and everything, it has generated everything, right? Views and everything, right? To me. Okay, so I don't want to do that, because if you do this, we already done this, we know how to, like generate everything automatically. Let's try to implement everything on your own. Okay, so web API to controller empty. This is going to be employee controller. This is my controller. Okay, so employee controller which inherits API controller. Now you can write your methods. Write your methods. So public. Okay, and I want to return list of employees. You can return some enumerable of employee, like get employees. Okay, just show potential fixes using this get employees. Okay, now what should I do? This method should return list of employees. Where do it come from? That comes from this DB context. So create object of your DB context, employee DB context, some EMP DB is equal to employee DB context. Right now, it has a property called employees that will return list of employees. Now, where EMP list is equal to EMP DB dot employees dot to list. Right? So we are just calling employees property and converting it into to list. And this has to be written to this return. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay. So by default, this method will be taken as HTTP GET. As I said, we have in the previous session, I told you when it comes to transmission protocol, data can be transferred in two ways, HTTP GET and HTTP POST. HTTP GET and HTTP POST. So what is the difference between these two? HTTP GET is limited. When it comes to HTTP GET, the data transmission will take place within HTTP header. So your data transmission will take place within HTTP body. And using HTTP GET, you'll be able to transfer maximum of 2 MB data. It is limited. And if you want to transfer large amount of data, your approach should be towards HTTP POST. And POST is more secure compared to HTTP GET. So if you are going to send small values like employee ID, customer ID, right, some single values, make use of HTTP GET. If you want to post large amount of data, like a complete employee record or customer record, then HTTP GET is not recommended. Make use of HTTP post. Any questions, guys?
No.
No, sir.
What should be the address of, for example, if someone wants to access employee data, now they can access it from my service. They can access it from my service. But I need to know what is the address of this service. Let it start. Okay. So this is the base address, localhost 60184. This is the base address. And what is the complete address? As I said, we have configured a default route. What is the default route? It is there in web.config. So this is a default route. Okay. So if your action method, if your service is not mapped to any route, by default, you should follow this format. Your base address /API/controller. What is my base address? Your base address is, let me close this. Your base address is this. And after this base address, it should start with API/controller. What is the controller name? Employee. Saying implied in the application does not contain the required. Okay. It is saying that the provider name is missing here under web.config. Here, we did not provide the provider name. Here. Provider is equal to, as I said, we have different providers, right? Oracle client, SQL client, ODB client. So we have to provide the system dot. It is a SQL server. So the provider is data dot SQL client. Okay. Now you need to understand these roots. This is very, very important. If end user wants to access this, so how do I access it? So here my route is going to be the standard base address, something like HTTP, localhost, and some port number. Let's say some 100 slash. And what is the standard format? Here I provided API/controller name. And it is going to be API/. What is my controller name? Employee. Read me. So if you want to access this, it should be provided something like this. Okay. So let's try to access this. Keep a breakpoint here and run your application. Okay. So this is a base address, right? So during your development, now your API has been hosted using a temporary IIS. So that's why it has been generated using a port number, default port number 60184. But when it comes to real time, there will be some a specific DNS name, something like oxford.com or abc.com. Okay. Now, according to default format defined in the web API config, it should be /API/ now your controller name, employee. See, now it came to my method. Okay. Now it will create the context. Now it will get the list of employees. Now I got employee list, right? And run this. Now, not only from this, once your service is hosted in the web server, right? We do host our service like this using a specific DNS and port number. It can be called from anywhere. Right to me. So now you are hitting your service from your web browser. For example, we have other third-party tools like Swagger and Postman. You could also call it from anywhere. And you can call it from your application too. Any Windows application, console application, web-based application, it can be consumed directly from anywhere. Now would I call it, for example, just take a new one. Okay. Paste your address here. And you should specify whether it is get or post. It is a get method or post method. It is a get. Okay. Now send. See, it came to my service. This is a third party tool, right? There is no link between my application and this application. So once it is hosted, it can be called from anywhere, right? Now run it. See, now I can see What happened? The whole thing has been written in the form of a JSON string. I did not write any specific standard to consume this, and it can be called directly into anywhere. That is the beauty of your web API. Any questions, guys?
No.
No,
Okay.
sir.
And let's write search. But the thing is, okay, first let me finish this. Okay, get implies. And if you want to give a specific route, for example, API is the default route. API is the default route. Okay, API slash get implies. You can override this. Okay, how do I override it? Using a route of. And one single method can be mapped to n number of routes. For example, my API slash get implies. My API slash get implies. And not only one route, you can give a number of routes. Some Oxford slash get implies. What are we doing? We are mapping the single route to multiple routes. Whenever you want to access this, we are hiding the actual name from this. If you do not provide any route, if I provide any route explicitly here, the default route will be overridden. If you provide some route, the default route will be overridden. If you do not provide anything, by default, this default thing will come into the picture. Okay, and on top of this, you can also give it a by default. This is HTTP GET only. You can also give it as HTTP GET. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
And if let's try to hit this again, send. What is happening? Now it is not going. Why? The default route got overridden with this new route. What is that? My API slash get implies. See, now it came. Are you getting me? Now we are overriding this. Now I'm able to access it through this new route. See. And not only one route, you can access. So a single service, a single action method can be mapped to multiple routes. I can also access it using another route. Yeah. It came. Any questions, guys? This is very, very important. Okay. So if you want to make use of, see, anywhere in any application, some default configuration has to be provided. That will be there in your API config file. But according to your requirement, you can override those routes. On top of your method, place your routes and give some meaningful names. A single service can be mapped to multiple routes. Any questions, guys?
No,
Okay.
sir.
No.
Next, I'm going to write another method. Okay. Search. I'd like to search int EMP. If I send some employee ID, the particular data record has to be extracted. Okay. So HTTP GET. Here you can give your route of my API slash search employee search. Okay. Now, how do I search it? Now I can write a link for it, something like this. If you want to search for something, what do you write here? Select star from employee where employee ID is equal to something like this. Okay. So here you can make use of your link query. You can write queries similar to your DB queries using link queue. How do I write it? It is very simple. In this employees, I can write where condition, where. Okay, use some lambda expression. X is equal to, X is nothing but your employee. X dot, here it will show you all the columns. Employee ID is equal to the employee ID supplied from the calling environment. I just added where class. Internally, what it will do, it will generate the similar SQL query. It has to go to the database and execute this command, right? So here you're not writing any SQL query, right? You're using LINQ to write your query, right? We are writing the query similar to a database query. So what you are doing, select star from employees where employee ID is equal to employee ID supplied from the user calling environment. It will generate similar database command. What will be generated in this case? It will generate a command something like this. Select star from employee where employee ID is equal to employee ID. And if I use one more condition and x dot emp name is equal to some AAA. Now what it will do? It will generate a similar query. Okay. It is going to something like where select star from employee where employee ID is equal to this and employee name is equal to this. Employee ID is equal to this and employee name is equal to this. So in ADO.NET, we used to write the queries directly. We used to call the stored process directly, but here we are not writing SQL queries directly. We are making use of entity framework to write queries using C#, right? It will reduce a lot of burden on this developer, but internally it also does the same thing. It will generate that equivalent SQL command. What is the equivalent SQL command of this? So we are trying to extract the employee information where employee is equal to this, employee name is equal to this. So what is the equivalent command for this? Select star from employee where employee is equal to employee separated from the calling environment and employee name is equal to this. The equivalent amount will be generated by the system. Only that command will be executed in the database, right? If you write a LINQ query, the equivalent command, SQL command will be generated by the system, and that SQL command will be executed in the database. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, let's search for this. And it is hosted. Okay. My API / search employee. Here I can send something like, what is the parameter here? EMP ID. Is equal to 3. See, the query parameter got passed, right? Now what it will do? It will go to employee and search for this. Now we got only that one. So there is no employee with the number 3. 3 is not there. Let's give it as 1002. See, I got that employee. And this is one way to supply the value. And I could also supply something like this. I don't want to supply as a query parameter. I want to supply something like / this parameter. You could also do that. This is something about search. Now, how do I add a new employee? Okay, so here I'm going to write public string add employee. What should they send? They should send the complete employee record, employee, right? Some EMP. But when it comes to employee, right, it is not going to be a single value. It is going to hold collection of fields, right? So in this case, what should be the type of my method? Should it be HTTP GET or HTTP POST? Here we are going to send a single value. That's why I took it as HTTP GET, right? Where here you need to provide security to your data. You may need to send large amount of data. In this case, HTTP GET is not recommended. You would use HTTP POST. HTTP POST. And here you can also specify a property like from body. What happens? The transmission will takes place from the body. Okay. Now create context. Now what should be done? Now it has to be added. Okay. How would I add it? empdb dot employees dot add range. If you want to add only one item at a time, like only one record at a time, you can use add. If you want to add collection of employees at a time, you can use add range. Add of what has to be added. So employee details sent from your database. Now what happens? It will be added to, as I said, your entity framework would create a context within your application memory. So it will be added to that context. If you want this has to be updated to your database permanently, you would call another method called empdb dot save changes. Now, whatever is updated to your context, it will, if you call save changes, and what are the changes that are pending for updation, okay, so it will take care of updating your context updates into database permanently. Now return some string saying that employee has been added successfully. Okay, any questions, guys? Now here add a root. Save. Okay, any questions, guys? And go here, it's going to be save. But here it is not going to be get, it's going to be post. I have to post something, right? What should be posted? Go to body, okay, select raw, and we have to post that employee data as a string, JSON string, select JSON. Select JSON, just emp ID, prepare a JSON string. Employee ID can be 0 because it will be generated automatically. Next, emp name, postman, test1. Next, salary, some 13,000. And next one is going to be address, right? ABC, Hyderabad, India. I prepared my object, right? As I said, everything can be exchanged in JSON format. Okay, so now I'm going to send the complete employee record as a JSON string. Okay, give the field name and value, field name and value, field name and value. We have only 4 fields. Employee will be generated automatically. That's why you don't have to send it. That's why I gave it as 0. And all you need to do, you just need to pass emp name, salary, and address. So emp names, field name should be matched. Okay, now post it. My API / save. So why this throwing error? Your service is not ready yet. Start the service. Semicolon is missing. Start the service. My service is started. Now I can send the request. See, now request came. Now the transmission has been taken place within HTTP body, right? Now you can see where the JSON string got supplied into address, emp ID, emp name, and salary. Okay. Now what it will do? First, it will add employee to your in-memory context. internal DB, right? Now, once you call save changes, it will get updated to your database. No, I got a response saying that employee has been added successfully. Go to your database and check. See, data has been successfully updated into database. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, but when it comes to the real-time applications, now you know how to create your DB context, how to expose your services using API controller. But when it comes to real-time applications, we do not write the code like this, because see, it is tightly coupled. If some other control wants to access employee information, if this code has to be reused by someone, it cannot, because inside every, and one more thing, inside every method, you're creating object of your employee DB context. This object is getting recreated too many times. And this cannot be reused because the complete code is tightly coupled with your action method, your service. For every user, if 100 user hits this, this will be recreated 100 different times. 100 different objects will be created. Because if I call this service, whatever is there inside it, everything will be recreated, right? Because this is tightly coupled with this. It cannot be reused. And every time the complete code has to be recreated, like all the resources that we are using here should be recreated every time for every user request. Are you getting me? So if you want to overcome this issue, if you want to reuse your code, if you want to avoid these many object creation, what has to be done? This has to be decoupled. This has to be decoupled into different layers. Get this placed into a different layer and reuse that layer, call that layer from here. It means right now these are tightly coupled, but when it comes to real-time applications, we have to follow solid principles. Solid principles. What is a solid principle? Single responsibility. Read me. What is a single responsibility? Do not write all operations in a single class. Rather, divide those methods into those many classes. Consider each method as one class. Consider each method. For example, I have a class, some print. Here, I'm writing methods like print Excel, print Word. Read me. Today I have only 2 documents. That's why I do 2 functions: print Excel and print Word. Tomorrow I need to print PDF. What should I do? Again, I should come back to this class and extend it. Add one more method, print PDF. If tomorrow you need to add one more functionalities, I should keep on adding this. What are we doing? Every time we are reopening this class and extending it. This is not a good practice. Rather than keep on adding these things, make each requirement as one class. That is, it should be open close principle. O means it should be open for new things, should be closed for updates. Dantu, admitted. Can you see now, Dantu?
Yes, sir. I
Okay.
was dropped.
So
Yeah.
in this sprint, right, when it comes to real-time environment, we should follow solid principles to make your application more independent of everything. To create a loosely coupled architecture, you have to decouple everything, make everything as independent layer. Everything should be independent of everything. Okay, so in this case, you need to follow set of design principles, design patterns. Okay, and this is one of the popular ones. Solid. Single responsibility should be open for new things, should be closed for updates. Leo's principle, inversion control, dependency injection. Read me. What it will tell you, the overall meaning of this is, for example, if you are going to create a print class, ideally, usually what we will do, If you need to print 3 documents, we'll create 3 methods like print Excel, print Word, print PDF. Tomorrow, if you need to print some other document, you would write one more method, print something. Every time what you're doing, you are again updating your class. You have to reopen this class, add this, recompile. Do not do like this. Rather, get each method converted into one class. Consider each operation as one class. I mean, class print Excel. Next, class print PDF. Tomorrow, if tomorrow I need to add print Word, do I need to modify Excel class? No. Do I need to modify PDF? No. I just need to create one more class. That's it. It doesn't impact any existing classes. Just create one more class. Class print Word. Each class should have a single responsibility. That is your S. Should be open for new things and should be closed for updates. Now I create a class Excel. If I want to add Word, do I need to update Excel? No. Do I need to disturb Excel? No. It has only the specific target. It has a single responsibility. This class will take care of printing only Excel. If I want to add one more new file, no. No need to modify Excel class. No need to modify PDF. You can add one more class. Keep on adding a number of classes. So the existing things will not be disturbed. Inversion control dependency injection. See, if for every user, this object will be recreated. If 1,000 requests comes to your method, 1,000 objects will be created. Where my object will be stored? It will be stored within my main memory. If you keep on adding the objects, it will definitely occupy your memory. Once your main memory becomes full, what happens? There will be no enough space to process your request. It will degrade performance of your application. To avoid this, what has to be done? Some dependency injection concept has to be implemented. What dependency injection will do? It will just take care of injecting the dependencies. Whenever the object needs to be created, whenever the first request from the first user comes to your application, one object will be created and that will be used towards different requests. And your dependency injection will take care of injecting the dependencies and whenever it is required on the fly. That we'll see later. Okay. So as I said, now this has to be decoupled. If this has to be reused, if you want to follow solid principle, this has to be decoupled into different layers. How do I decouple it? Let's create a simple structure. You have to make use of a repository pattern. We already discussed this in MVC. We'll repeat it again. So this is your controller. Right now we have written everything in the controller. I don't want to do that. Create a service layer. Create a repository. Next, your database. This is your database. And this is my repository. And this is the service. And this is my controller. Now your controller can be called from anywhere. Client 1, client 2, client 3, client 4. Client 1, client 2, client 3, and client 4. Okay. Your request can come from anywhere. Your controller can be accessed from anywhere, from any client. N number of people can access your controller. right? There can be a number of requests. This is the one which will face your HTTP traffic. Right now, we have written everything here. When first request from first line comes to your service, what type of an object will be created? Everything. Here we have written only 3 lines. When the real time, we'll be writing 100 different lines also. Everything will be recreated for client 1. When client 2 request comes, same thing will be repeated for client 2. We are not able to reuse it. Everything is getting recreated, right? To avoid this, what has to be done? So whatever we are doing, whatever the logic that is written here to get data from your database should be decoupled. You should have only the logic of getting data, returning data. That's it. Alright, so this should be moved to your repository pattern. Okay, you should create structure something like this. This is your database, right? So this is your repository, and this is your service. This is your controller. Okay, so write all your DB context related data in repository. A repository will interact with the database, and this can be called from your service. Your controller will just call the service. Controller calls the service. Service calls repository. Repository interact with your database. In this case, what happens? The same service can be called from n number of controllers. The same repository can be reused by n number of services. Already, so we are decoupling the things to make it more well structured and more reusable. Any questions, guys?
No.
Now, this is what we are going to implement now. Any questions?
No, sir.
Let's do this. Okay, let's get this mode. How do I do this? Create one more folder here. Add new folder. So this is what you will see in the real-time environment. A repository. And we need one more folder. What is that? Services. Right? So in the repository, add interface. Okay, again, I want to consider all these operations: get employees, set employees, such employees. Okay, I want to consider all these operations as abstract methods. So I want to make use of interface, because so the method can be used by different entities, classes. Interface. I'm giving it as employee repository. It is an interface. Here I will define what should be exposed. Employee repository. Okay. So now here I'll write all these methods. Whatever we are writing here. Okay. Get employees. Get this model imported here. Next. Such employee. Next. Save employee, update employee, delete employee. Okay, so based on your requirement, you can write n number of methods here. Okay. You can write a number of methods. Now, this repository, this interface has to be implemented by the class. So add a class, employees repository. Employee repository. So this is going to implement your employee repository. Right? Just click here, get it implement interface. All methods should become here. Now, whatever we have written here, right? I am just going to move this employee repository. What add employee first? What get employee will do? That's it. This is the first one. We are moving everything here. Next, search employee. Right? Next, add employee. Right? Now, create your service. Okay. Now, repository will interact with your database. Okay. And go to your service, create your service. Now we have created this layer. This layer is ready. Now this can be called from service or anywhere. Now we are going to create a service. This will just call this method. That's it. Okay. Let's create a service. Go to services, add an interface. Employee service. So what it will do, same methods, copy the same methods over there. Public. This model, get it imported. Right? Now this employee service has to be implemented by the class. Give the name as employee service. Now we will see how to connect your layers. Okay, and this should inherit employee service. Implement this. Implement interface. Now what it will do, add employee, it will just call the method of employees repository. It will just call the method of employee repository. Okay. So keep a constructor. If you just type C tar tab, your constructor will be generated. Just create instance of your employee repository. Employee repository is equal to new employee repository. Just get it imported, the corresponding namespace, and generate a field. We have created a field. Okay, and just creating instance of how do I connect service and this technically. Now I need to access repository from service. Now I need to connect this with this. How do I access this? I need to create instance of repository in service. If I create instance of repository in service, now I can access repository. So both the layers will be connected. How do I connect controller and service? I need to create instance of service in controller. Let me create instance of repository in service. Create instance of service in controller. That way we'll be able to connect one layer to another layer. Any questions, guys, so far?
No.
No,
Okay.
sir.
Now add employee. What I will do, I will just return. That's it. Return this. I will just call the method of this employee repository dot add employee of. So whatever is supplied from end user, I'll just pass and call it. That's it. Right? Next, I'll show you how it works. Next, get employees. What I will do, just return employees repository dot get employees. Next, search employee, return employee repository dot search employee, search of EMP ID. Right? Now we connected service with repository. Right? If anyone can call this employee service. If they call add employee, what add employee will do? Add employee will call the repository. We'll go to repository and call add employee of repository. Okay, we'll show you, we'll debug and show you that. Now these two layers are connected. Now you have to connect this layer with your actual controller. Here now, I don't need to write this much stuff. What should I do? If I want to get employees, I just to call employee service. I just need to call employee service. Employee service. Just get it imported here. Employee service. Some EMP service is equal to new employee service. That's it. I'll just call EMP service return. EMP service dot get employees. That's it. Right? Earlier we have written a complete code here, but I'm just calling this service. And similarly here. Employee service return EMP service dot search of EMP ID. Right? Remove this. EMP service dot add employee of EMP. Return. Right? Now what happens if I call get employees? Right? Where is my actual code? It is there in repository. See, if I call, if the end user calls get employees, what it will do? It calls employee service. From here, the request will go to the service. Now we are in service. What service will do? It calls repository, go to implementation. See, the repository will actually interact with the database, get the employee list. This is what we implemented here. This is entire architecture. Right? So this is what we do in the real time. Any questions, guys? Any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. Now let's run this. Keep a breakpoint. Breakpoint. And breakpoint. Okay. Now, first, let's start this service and get employees. Right? Now go to your Postman. Get employees. Just copy this URL. Right? Click on send. Now it came to get employees. See, press F11. It will go to employee service. Now it came to employee service. Right? It has created the repository. Next. Call get employees. See, now it will go to from here, it will go to employee repository. Now employee repository will interact with the database and return the list. Now see, now repository has executed the command. Now return, it will be returned back. See, from where the request is coming, you need to understand the flow. Your Postman is nothing but your client. Your Postman is nothing but your client, right? Postman send the request to controller. From controller, a request went to service. From service, request went to repository. Now repository has extracted data from your database. From repository, request will go to database. From database, the actual command will be executed in the database. It will produce some result. Results will be handed over to repository. From repository, again, it will go back to service. From service, it will go back to controller. From controller, it will go back to the client, whoever is requested for that. It's a kind of two-way flow. Okay. So now it has executed. Now where it will go? It will go to your service. Say now we are in service. From here, the result will be returned to controller. From here, the result will be returned to your client. That is your postman. Now I can see the data. Any questions, guys?
T minus, okay, that's the policy
No, sir.
actually.
Okay. So this is something about your repository pattern. But here, there is one more problem. Every time we are creating the instance of this, right? If too many requests comes to your server, too many objects will be created, right? This would keep a lot of burden on the system, right? And even I don't want to create the object like this. Employee service, it has its own interface, which has abstract methods. Okay. So I want this object has to be created only once and should be reused towards different sub requests. In this case, you need to implement a concept called dependency injection. Dependency injection. Okay. So if you want to implement dependency injection, you would add, there are so many third-party providers are there, and Unity control container is one of the popular one, and there are many. Okay, go to NuGet packages. Add Unity container. It is an open source project. Unity framework. On this Unity data is okay. You will have Unity config. Okay. So once the dependency injection container is added to your application, so you should be able to see this Unity config. Okay. Your all you need to do here is like, you have to mention your types. You have to mention your types. Like, for example, here we have these many classes here. We have employee service and employee service. We are creating object of these two, and we are also creating object of these two, right? So now for every user request, these objects are getting created too many times. Okay, so I don't want to do that. Rather, whenever the first request from first user comes to your service, the object of these two has to be created and should be holding somewhere. And if the similar request comes, these objects should be reused towards different sub requests. And wherever I refer something like I employee repository, there this object should be injected directly. Okay, so for that you have to register the types. How do I register it? Just uncomment this register type What type I should say here? I employee service. Get that namespace imported here. Where is I employee countries? Employee. Okay, so wherever I refer I employee service, this dependency should be resolved by injecting the object of employee service. Okay, in the same way, repository also. What is this? I employee repository. Where is I employee repository? Get that namespace imported. I employee repository. Just copy it from here. Or you can directly import this namespace. Using I employee repository. So wherever I refer I employee repository, there the instance of employee repository should be injected. Okay, now you don't need to, wherever you want to call employee service or employee repository, you don't have to create instance something like this. You don't have to create instance something like this. You don't have to use new keyword. Rather, if I use I employee repository, wherever I use it, so what it will do, it will just create the instance. If the instance is already created, it will just inject that instance. I mean, I don't have to do like this, something like this. What I can do, I just need to refer that interface, I employee repository, some employee repository. No need to use new keyword. Just generate this field. Now what happens? Whenever this constructor is invoked, right? We just took the parameter as I employee repository. Okay, we have specified here, this is your dependency injection. Okay, so wherever it finds this, it will inject this corresponding instance. Right? Whenever the first request comes from server, here you have too many things like register single call and singleton also. If I use singleton, what happens? The object will be created only once and will be reused towards different sub requests. I can also use this single call, singleton. What is the difference between these two? We have seen in remoting. If it is single call, the object will be created for each and every user request. If 100 request comes from the service end user, it will be recreated 100 different times. If I use singleton, whenever the first request from first user comes to your service, it will create the instance of your employee service and hold it within your application memory. And again, if the request comes to the same service, this will be reused. Wherever you refer I employee service, it will be injected directly over there. For example, here I am using I employee repository. What happens? Wherever I use I employee repository, we are saying this, we clearly defined it. This dependency should be resolved by injecting this object. This dependency should be resolved by injecting this object. So wherever it sees this, it will be injected. The object of this class will be injected. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Now what happens? We are not using new keyword because we're not creating any object explicitly. Now what happens? Your dependency injection will keep watching the things. Wherever it finds this, how does it resolve this dependency? By injecting the instance of employee repository. It will be injected here, and we are just saving this into one of our local variable and reusing it everywhere. Alright, me. Similar case here also. Where is this? Your controller. Right? Here, everywhere I'm using new keyword, right? Not required it. Just create a constructor. Right? If I inject I employee service, some employee service, just create a local variable, just generate the field, right? So we create a local variable And whenever the constructor is created, here it will inject employee service object. We are storing it into a local one. Now, no need to create it everywhere. Delete it. How do I access it? Now, just I employee service dot get employee. Employee service dot search employee service dot add employee. This is not required anymore, right? You have to minimize your code, reduce the complexity, and increase the reusability of code. Now it looks pretty clean, right? Now it looks pretty clean. This is what a professional developer will do. This is what we do in the real time. Any questions, guys? And coming to Unity config, so create instance of this in your application. Go to global.ax. What is there in global.ax? So this is the global configuration file, web.config and global.config. So global.ax contains events related to your application memory and session memory, right? Application underscore start. You can also write events related to your session. So whenever your application is started in your web server, whenever it is hosted, so this event will be triggered. If you want something has to be initialized whenever the application is started, that should be placed here. Read me. Just create unit config some uconfig is equal to new unit config, right? It generate cannot do. Okay, they placed a static method, just call register types. Not register type. What is the name of this? Yeah, register types of container. So your class name is container. Okay, so you just need to call this method. That's all. Now what it will do? So whenever your application is started, this application underscore start event will be inbuilt. Okay. Now if you call this register types of unit config, what unit config will do? So it will add all the dependencies here. It will tell the system how to resolve the dependencies. So your employee service and this thing will be registered, and wherever you do this, it will be injected automatically. Any questions, guys? Any questions?
No. No, sir.
Okay. So now your MVC and WebAPI has completed. In the next class, okay, so we are going to focus on .NET Core. So we will see the same thing, okay, MVC application, and you have to implement this, okay, MVC application as well as the Web API, okay. We will implement the same things using your .NET Core. Any questions?
No. No, sir.
Okay, so we have seen like how to design a MVC application, how to design your Web API, and how to implement a dependency injection in your MVC. Okay, and we also have seen how to use the advanced design patterns like repository pattern, how to connect your service layer, repository layer, and database. Okay, and I'll be needing two last sessions to complete your .NET Core. Okay, but please do practice whatever we have discussed today. This is very, very important. Once you join your application, you will see the similar structure. Same thing will be there. You will see your controller. If you want to know the end-to-end flow, what you have to do, just right click on this, go to implementation. It will take you to next layer. Right click on this, go to, it will take you to next layer. There are other layer, right click on this, go to next layer. Okay.
Okay, sir. Okay.
So you will see only these kind of similar structures. In most of the applications, you will see this common pattern called repository pattern. Okay, and for don't get confused. So wherever you see something like this, you should think, oh, it is a dependency injection. It is a dependency injection, right? So here you have to add dependency injection manually. But when it comes to .NET Core, no need to add this manually. It will be automatically taken care by your system. It will be automatically taken care by your .NET Core. So it has a lot of advantages. .NET Core has a lot of advantages compared to your classic .NET. Okay. So in tomorrow's session, we'll be discussing .NET Core. Okay. So please go ahead and practice these.
Okay, sir.
Okay. So first, I have explained it in 3 different ways. First, try to call your DB context from your controller. Then decouple it, repository using repository pattern. Read me. Okay. Then connect all the layers, then execute the things. Okay. Any questions, guys?
No, sir.
Okay, perfect. We'll meet tomorrow.